And good evening, fellow adventurers in space and time. It is Monday. It's good to be back with you all once again here on the stream. Fantastic. How are we all? It's good to see you all in the chat. You all have lovely, lovely bright colours in my chat window. There's purples and oranges and blues and greens, and it's just a psychedelic gloriousness of writers and writing interested science fiction and fantasy fans from all across the universe. Excellent. Although on the screen here, obviously to be green, but anyway, hey, never mind. Green is good. Green is my favourite colour, actually, which is a small piece of trivia that is of no value at all. But there we are. Never mind. Anyway, it's lovely to have you all on. For those of you who've joined in recent weeks, and those of you who are long-term veterans of the total craziness that is my streams. But there we go. It's Monday. We are back. It's sci-fi and fantasy. Chattering. I don't quite how the colours work, because in my chat window on OBS they're all over the place, the colours. I mean, they're really nice, whereas on the screen they seem to be mostly blue, mostly green, except for Glenn. Glenn is singled out for some strange reason for being Man vs. Pixels is orange as well, orangey yellows. I don't know, is that a setting I can fix? I don't know. Or is it just different every time? Okay, well there we go. That's weird, isn't it? So I don't know. Maybe there's something I need to tweak. Bilbo Gavin says he's red on Twitch. Well, you're blue on my screen and a light green in the chat window, but for reasons I do not understand. Talk Noble is here, and he's dark green, which is a very fetching shade. Actually, that sort of British racing green. I like that one. So Talk Noble gets my vote as best colour so far this evening. Which looks excellent. I'm fond of dark green. In fact, dark green is definitely my favourite colour. So I don't know how the colours work. But anyway, never mind. You're all here. That's the main thing. It's a setting which each user can control. There we go. Woody 1974, Bilbo Gavins. It's like it's. So look, Nim Duskrin's managed to get the nice dusky shade of orange there. Mine should be orange. It is. So there we go. Commander Terekov. Now you're this sort of generic green, I'm going to have to call it. I don't understand how that stuff works. We're all colourblind here, unlike a football fan. Oh dear. Well, I did watch the football. Now, as you know, I have possibly ranted in the past about how I'm not a big fan of football. But given it was potentially an historic moment, which obviously for the UK it wasn't. But although I suppose we haven't been into the final of the football for quite a long time, it had the potential to be quite an historic event. But in the end, we lost. But so some of the reactions afterwards, I mean, I do despair. I mean, being Canadian by birth and being British by nationality and happening to only live in England, I'm not actually English at all. But I do feel a bit kind of like really embarrassed on behalf of, there are normal English people about who aren't nasty and mean and horrible. But we do seem to get a bad rep, particularly with football fans. I don't think it's exclusive to football fans at all, but we do seem to have we always seem to have some fairly badly behaved people at these events. But never mind. Anyway, we lost the football. So there we go. Danny Vega subscribed at tier 1. Thank you very much for the subscription. I do appreciate that. I really need to get my whatever they call those things, the plinky thing that goes blah, 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 blah. You've done a thing working again, but I've lost it in the midst of my OBS things. I'm Welsh, but I feel gutted for the football trial. Yeah, so I must admit, I think I've talked about this in a semi-serious tone in the past. This is a good distraction. We're already off. Well done, everybody. Look, Alan's changed his colour to something I can't even read. I changed my colour. No, I didn't. Yeah, making lots of sense there, Alan. Well done. Yes, I did. Alan's not quite sure. He used to be decisive. Now he's no longer sure. This whole national patriotism business. I mean, I'm not sure patriotism and nationalism are exactly the same thing, but I suppose it's, for those of us who are in a situation like me where you're a nationality because of where you were born, but you didn't grow up there. You've got a passport which is related to a place where you are under the kind of legal system that you're in, but you weren't born there, so you're not kind of part of it. And I'm living in the country in which I was neither born nor operates as a legal entity, which is very confusing. So I live in England, but I'm not English. I was born in Canada, so I am Canadian, but I actually have a British passport, which of course is the amalgamation of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland at present, which is called the United Kingdom. Actually, sorry, no, hang on, Britain. This is where it gets very confusing. Britain isn't Northern Ireland, sorry, it's Northern Ireland. Am I right in saying Britain is the island? I don't know how it works. I think Britain is Scotland, Wales and England, isn't it? Is that right? And Northern Ireland is the United Kingdom. I think I'm not sure. And if I can't explain it, anyway, it's very confusing. But anyway, I'm not English, despite the fact that I live in England. And I've never really got this whole. Okay, so there we go. Gianna nowadays on the case. There we are. So Britain is 3 countries. United Kingdom is 4. And then there's Southern Ireland, which is separate from Northern Ireland, although it's on the same island of Ireland, which is really hard to say when you're drunk. I just don't quite get this, allegiance to your country thing. I mean, maybe I feel different if I was living many decades ago and I was in danger of being invaded by a foreign power. I don't know. I wonder sometimes, and then I see other countries who are America always seems very, very patriotic to me, and I kind of get that. There's that whole thing with the flag and stuff, which I'm sort of looking at it going, but it's a flag, and yet it seems to be a almost like a deity, to some of you guys in America, which I find quite odd, actually. I'm kind of like, you swear allegiance to a flag. What does that mean? It's a flag. I don't get it. Trying being Irish by parentage, born in England, living in Scotland, and staunch supporter of Scottish independence. Yeah, you see, I kind of get that. See, I like the place. I love visiting places, and I love seeing the different cultural things, and I love understanding a bit of the history of things that have gone on. But I just don't get the tie to a nation, because I just don't understand it really. Do you have a? Well, I mean, yeah, we do have a flag. I mean, we have the UK flag. Again, it's very confusing. Okay, we have what's called the Union flag, which is actually an amalgamation of 3 different flags. So you've got the English flag, which, let me get this right, is a red cross on a white background. Then we have the Scottish flag, which is a white diagonal cross, I think, on a blue background. And then there's the Welsh one, which is actually a dragon, but the dragon seems to get lost in translation somewhere. And then all those 3 get mashed up, and you end up with the Union flag, which is the recognisable one that everyone knows us for. I like the Welsh one with the dragon, actually, but the dragon doesn't appear on the Union flag. The flag waving in the UK is sort of a bit. I don't know. I mean, if you have a flag outside your house, it's kind of like, that's a bit odd. It's not necessarily wrong. It's just, that's a bit odd. Why have you got a flag outside your house? It has, I suppose, slightly negative connotations in the UK, at least where I live. Sorry, no, I've got it wrong. Sorry. Sorry, there's a blue cross on a white background. Okay, so apologies for that. Hang on a minute, which one's the white diagonal cross on the blue background? Who's that then? How to annoy a Scot. Tell them theirs is 3 blue triangles on the white background. It's got Northern Ireland, okay. So it shows you how well I know the etymology of my flags. I'm a nation I'm supposed to be living in. So there should be a dragon somewhere on our flag, but there isn't for some reason. Rather a white cross on a blue. So it's but we don't. I mean, it's we don't have flags flying very often. So, for example, most schools in the UK will not have a flag in them, whereas I think that's pretty common in the United States that there's a flag. Okay, and whilst we will have flags on important buildings in the UK, like Buckingham Palace or some of the castles, that sort of thing, it's not a common sight to see a flag flying in the UK, and it's not a thing that is sort of important to us, that we hold in, I suppose, in great reverence. Like I seem to. I don't. I mean, maybe I'm off base with the US, but that's the impression I get, is that the flag is like a, you don't touch the flag. It's disrespecting the flag is like it's like spitting on your children kind of thing. You just don't do it. It's not acceptable. Whereas in the UK, I don't think we'd be all that. We'd probably go and have a fist fight if somebody was punching up on the flag, but it wouldn't be sacrilege like it seems to be in America. So I don't know. So it's very different in different countries, and this whole nationalism, patriotism thing. Fight for your country, and your country is. I don't get it. I genuinely don't get it. I suppose I'm sort of with Carl Sagan on this one. The pale blue dot. We're just residents of a planet. Okay, we all happen to live on this planet. All the lines we've drawn on the ground are totally imaginary, and there's no real difference between most of us. And it's very artificial, and it seems to be the way humanity kind of is organised itself. So I don't know. What do you guys think? So it is a bit weird to see people flying the flag in the UK. It's not something that we would associate with kind of normal. So I must admit, when I see a lot of the sort of the prestige that I suppose given to the flag in other countries, it does look a little bit odd to us. So in the US, Glenn, so Glenn's my resident American explainer, which is very handy to have. In the US, flag flies at government buildings, including post office and fire police station. Individuals put them up sometimes, but not as common as you might think. Okay, well that's interesting, because you get the impression that the flag is everywhere. So that's interesting. It says, fight for this bit of land that is virtually indistinguishable from that other bit of land, with an imaginary line drawn down bits of it, depending on where you are. That's one thing I suppose the UK has genuinely had for most of its history, is that we're an island, so the edge of it is quite easy to define. Whereas if you're in a continental country, I suppose that's a bit more tricky. It's I don't know. I suppose, Gina, you're quite right. It's slightly. It's got a whiff of distastefulness about it in the UK, which I don't think travels overseas. So it's I don't know. Maybe that's just a cultural thing for where you live. So. In some places you can see the US-Canada border from space due to the different farming practices on each side. Well, that's interesting, of course, yeah. And on holidays, people put flags up. Independence Day, isn't that Traitors' Day? Independence Day, Colonial Traitors' Day. Can I say that on this, Jim? Am I allowed to say things like that? But you know what I mean. That's a long time ago. Let's be honest. There's nothing to do with our generation at all. But yeah, Traitors' Day. Yes. There was once, years and years and years ago, there was an email that went round, and it was sort of a humorous one, basically saying, right, I can't remember which president it was. It might have been, was it? I think it was after. It must have been Bill Clinton or somewhere around that kind of era, basically, where they said there was a fake letter from the Queen. Basically said, right, okay, we've had enough. You Americans, you've had several hundred years to sort this out, but we are now taking back control, and what you must do is you change all your flags to British ones, obviously. Start drinking tea properly. Get away with those ridiculous accents. But we don't want Alabama. You can keep that. or something to that effect. And we're just revoking your right to be an independent colony from this point forward. Signed, the Queen. And then there was, a few weeks later, there was an email back from the people of the United States saying, thank you for the invitation to be a sovereign part of the British Empire, but we politely decline because we like the... We like our tea the way we make it, etc., etc., etc. But it basically got all the way down, rebutting all the points, and basically said, Alabama, yeah, we understand. It's all ancient history, but there we go. Make America great British again. I don't know if that's going to go down too well. But there we go. The strange Americans celebrate the day they declared independence, not the day they actually won it. Yeah, I mean, weird oddities of history anyway, but there we go. So how do we get to this topic? It was the football, wasn't it? It's very strange. So I must admit, I don't know whether it's more because I spend a lot of my time thinking about space and the future that I find all this talk of countries and small imaginary divisions on the ground and political constructs and all this stuff. Just, I find it really pedestrian and, I suppose, backward and primitive and kind of a bit pathetic. It's like there's a whole bunch of crabs squabbling about some sand. This is like, it doesn't matter. There's a whole business about borders and things. It's the planet, okay? We live on the planet. It's not like the air or the water or even the land stays still for very long. I mean, all the lines we've drawn will be erased by plate tectonics, quite slowly, obviously, but at some point that's going to be a problem for the politicians, isn't it? We're going to have to stop plate tectonics because it keeps moving the borders. And the water that I was drinking earlier on has probably come from America. I mean, it's American water. You're going to have to come and liberate the water because it's moved across the sea. It's stupid. It really is stupid. And the air. Oh no, well the air. Yeah, well the air that's come down from the North Pole, so that's ours. It just doesn't make any sense. Well, I know, don't you think... Yeah, well, this is the thing. When we do go into space, what's going to happen? I mean, that's a really interesting question, which may distract me for a few more minutes. It's a very good question. What's going to happen? Because at the moment, we're kind of going... We have historically gone into space, by government work, haven't we? So big government's gone into space. The Americans went into space. The Russians or the Soviet Union, should I say, went into space, China's now in space, the British Empire hasn't gone to space. We have had some astronauts, to be fair, but we don't have any rockets that can go to space. So whereas it's beginning to change, isn't it? Now, of course, we've had Mr. Branson sort of go into space. In the last few days, I feel. I mean, I do. I mean, the guy is. Okay. Yes. I don't know Richard Branson. I know he's got a few skeletons in his closet. But at the end of the day, he's sat atop this organisation that's put a spaceship into a low suborbital. Not well. Is suborbital the right word? It's basically gone up and come back down again, hasn't it? It's kind of like a free fall. It's not really gone into space. Kind of. It's gone past 50 miles up, hasn't it? And then kind of fallen back and landed again. Which, to be fair, is pretty impressive. Not to knock the achievement. That's I can't do that. It's still an impressive thing to have done. And the fact that I think it goes up from an airport kind of place, takes off, flies through up into space, then comes back and lands at the same airport, is pretty impressive stuff. But it is a bit of a tech demo, isn't it? So that's the thing. There we go, Commander. Well, there's a good question. You say, if aliens invaded the Earth, it would only be seconds before we became Earthers. Yeah, that's right. So all that sort of thing. I wonder, will politics follow us out? So will you? when you're up in space, because we have that treaty, don't we, that we can't. The outer space has to be shared for all nations. I think that's there's a space treaty or something. Whether people will adhere to that, or whether corporations will be fighting in space rather than governments. That's really interesting, because that's more the premise of things like The Expanse, isn't it? That actually it's the belters, or Mars or versus Earth versus the belters versus the outer systems, that sort of stuff. Is it the locale that you become territorial over? And is that human nature to become territorial to a degree, and then you form kind of tribal liaisons with tribes around you for mutual protection, and that becomes a political entity of itself? I don't know. Is that going to happen in space? Virgin Apex taxi services. I mean, what Richard Branson's done was very impressive technically, but it's almost totally pointless, isn't it? I mean, it goes up into the vacuum and then falls down again. And I was timing it. The entire space trip part of that flight. Now, obviously, he has to go up on the airplane bit, the mothership, as they call it. That bit takes a while to get up to altitude. But the actual rocket bit, where you basically release from the mothership, go fire the rocket, go up into space, and then land, took almost exactly to the second, actually, 15 minutes. Now, I don't know how much a trip on Virgin Galactic is going to be, but I'm assuming it's going to be reassuringly expensive. That's a very, very, very fast way to blow that kind of cash. And it's kind of, I mean, where does that spaceship go? It doesn't go anywhere, and I can't, is it going to go any further in the future? Because you're going to need more rockets, surely. Is it planned? Has he got a roadmap whereby he's actually going to go into orbit, or is it literally just a thrill ride for rich people? Because yes, you're technically going into space, i.e. there's a vacuum outside, but it's just basically a really expensive roller coaster, isn't it? As far as I can see. Some form of politics will exist for as long as the species exists. I think you're probably right, sadly. Who wants to go on a space flight that doesn't go all the way? Yes. We might have a new Martian nation. Well, you see, that's interesting. I think Mars, when we get to Mars, people who are going to there, because eventually you're going to have people born there, aren't you? And then technically they're Martians. So does that mean then Mars becomes a political entity? And then you've got the tension of, does Mars become self-sufficient from Earth at some point in the future? And then is it its own nation? I don't know. So neither Spaceship Two nor New Shepard will ever be orbital. So it's a bit of a dead end. It's a sort of how billionaires compare the size of their appendages, basically, as far as I can work out. You float about a bit, sick in the bag, and then spend 10 grand. Is it that cheap? 10 grand? So I was thinking maybe £100,000 for a trip like that. I don't know. How much is a ticket into space or near space? But that's a very, very, even though it's a very expensive way to spend 50 minutes. So corporations, by their very nature, will only spend money to go into space if they can make a profit. Well, see, that's the interesting thing. Is there profit to be made in space, and how? That's going to be interesting for them to work out. There's always an us and them. Yeah, we are very. You're quite right, Bill Berger. I mean, that's what humanity's history shows. It's always us and them, isn't there? We're very good at us and them. There's. I mean, I've experienced it on every level. I mean, obviously politics at a high level. Then there's at a personal level at school. There is us and them in the gangs at school. I mean, even at a really stupid geeky level, there's like ZX Spectrum owners and Commodore 64 owners, right? It's us and them. And then there's weird people with the BBCs, but don't talk about them. At every level it's us. We're the cool guys, the ZX Spectrum owners, and then there's them, the evil Commodore 64 owners. I don't know. It's just like, but totally indistinguishable at any reasonable level. And it's the same with you see it time and time again, don't you, with the console wars, and then the PC versus the console, even in technical geekery, where you'd hope that there were some people who were a little bit able to elevate themselves above these base instincts. Nah, Doesn't work. Ah, dear. Virgin Galactic was founded in 2004 and has already sold roughly 600 tickets priced around $250,000 each. Youch. The big question about Mars is what colour will their path? It has to be red, right? Surely. It has to be sort of a dusky red. I suppose it's just how biological life works. Well, that's because we are almost hardwired to be competitive in small groups, aren't we? It seems to be that's the way we are. Typical Spect owner. C64 users would never stoop. Glenn signed on to the ticket giveaway to go and win 2 seats. I would go on it if I didn't have to pay. Yeah, I think I probably would as well. Although the experience, apparently, of going from, I mean, you're not weightless. That's the wrong. Yeah, but free fall, shall we say? But you know what I mean when I say weightless. The experience of going from weight, having weight on the plane, to going effectively into 0G or microgravity or free fall, as it effectively is, in the plane, is really quite unsettling. Because effectively, your brain is telling you that you are literally in free fall. You have, so you're going to feel like you're falling constantly until the gravity comes back, and that can be very disorientating. I'm sure there's going to be all sorts of sick bag protocols on the spaceship, which if you're locked in a small room with a few other people for 15 minutes, it's not going to be good. So it's expensive enough to take a shopping trip to Edinburgh from Orkney, 50 minutes in space, a few £100, not even a waitress at the end. That's why you don't even go anywhere. You arrive back at the same place you started. I'm okay with that. If I barf, but it will be fun. Yes, I think if I was given a free ticket, I would probably go, but I don't think I'll be saving $250,000. So there we go. Anyway, that was a very successful waffle, everybody. Well done. That was good. So space politics. Doris will be on hand with the mop and bucket when you know. Oh dear. That doesn't sound nice at all, does it? But no, actually, Tim Peake, one of the astronauts, he wrote quite an interesting set of things about travelling into space, and it actually sounds really, really unpleasant. Really, really unpleasant. I think I would actually be very much advised not to go into space, because I do have recurrent issues with my sinuses. For whatever reason, my sinuses get blocked really easy. It's very, very common for me to have either a blocked nose or blocked ears or something on a regular basis, and just seems to be a sort of physiological problem that I have, and a lot of other people have similar things. In space, apparently, because there's no gravity, your ears never clear. So if you've got any inclination to blocked sinuses, space is not your friend. You will have constantly blocked sinuses in space. Coupled to that, the whole weightless thing and bits of your bones deteriorating. So space tries really, really hard to make you uncomfortable, and then it kills you. So the dream of Dru-ids, space adventurer, long since died, I'm afraid. So I like the idea of travelling into space, but the practicalities of it, I less and less keen on as I get on. If it's a space hotel with duty free, hot and cold running water, a shower, some nice comfy armchairs and some pseudo gravity, then yes, I'm in. If it's just a tin can rolling around in space in microgravity and freefall, nah, I think I'll pass, thanks. A stuffy nose versus flying out the atmosphere, you could do. Yeah, I probably would. I'm being silly. But there we go. Anyway, a good waffle. Right, come on, pay attention. Topic of the evening. Right, sci-fi, a science fiction and fantasy trope tonight, which I don't believe we've discussed before. So bringing us back on topic. There we go. Right, so I was thinking today, and over the weekend actually, I don't know why it occurred to me, but it occurred to me. Telepathy. We haven't discussed things like that before. Now, that's a real common thing in science fiction and fantasy, the ability to communicate thoughts or exchange information by the power of your mind. So I'm going to transmit something here. Can you receive it? Here we go. I'm gonna transmit it through the ether. Did you get it? Let's see if it works, because I don't think it does. But the ability, me squirrels receiving waffles, yes. Clearly, we have just proved live on the stream that telepathy is in fact a real thing. That was kind of funny. There was, of course, a high probability that I was going to say that, but there we go. It's a red banana. No, I didn't get it. It was too disorganised. See you next Thursday. The main species in D&D type stories. So, we have proved tonight that at least some of you are able to receive telepathic thoughts. A false I've read says, hi from Josh, Sam, Kylan, Eva and Emily on the bus. I hope to see you soon too. Take care, guys. Hope you are, hope you hope the bus breakdown is okay, so good to see you. Lucky Luigi's here as well. Good to see you. See, Skim, I'm not sure about telepathy, but human instinct is very strong. That's true. So, I mean, in theory, and I must admit, I've not done much research into this. I should probably do some more, because I have used a type of telepathy in my story. So those of you who know Shadewood know that some of the characters, the women, the priestesses, are able to transmit their thoughts to each other by means. Okay. And minor spoilers, it's not a native ability that they have on their own. It's some technology, but they don't know that. Okay. So I've explained it by technology. Now, theoretically, I'm pretty sure, from a science fiction perspective, it's not too much of a stretch of the imagination for us to imagine some small radio transmitter in the side of your head, or on the back of your ear, or I don't know, stuck in the back of your head or something, or a little aerial popping up from your hat. That'll work. Where you could transmit, it's like a walkie-talkie, isn't it? It's no real different from that. And you could miniaturize that and embed that technology into your head, and then be able to broadcast things. So a technological solution to having a sort of telepathy type thing is reasonable. I think it's quite likely. It seems like one of those things that probably will happen. Because I mean, we're so used. Where's my phone? I mean, we're so used to using a phone, right? Aren't we? Surely that's going to continue to get miniaturized and maybe embedded into our eyeballs or ears at some point in the future. I'm not telepathic. I'm telepathetic. Yeah. So augmented technology would I think, from a science fiction perspective, will probably happen. It doesn't seem too much of a stretch of the imagination to think that could easily happen in the next few decades. And then effectively we would have telepathy anyway, at least the ability to communicate with each other. But of course telepathy goes a long way further than that. If I'm telepathic, I have the ability to read your mind at a distance. Now that would be very invasive, wouldn't it? So telepathy would work, but AOL have the patent. Vulcan mind meld is a form. So a Vulcan mind meld. So that's very true. So in good old Star Trek, go back to Star Trek. Mr. Spock does his there we go. He kind of plugs his hands on your forehead, and he can read your mind. He can my thoughts to your thoughts, all that sort of stuff. He can communicate. Or possibly pull information, pull thoughts out of your thing. So the ability to talk to each other doesn't seem very far-fetched. The ability for me to figure out what you're thinking, though, that's slightly different, isn't it? Button pusher. I had a nightmare about a friend in the UK, and in the dream she was being hurt by something. Later she told me she fell off a ladder and injured herself. So there's sometimes that sympathetic vibration between people, isn't it? And in Time for the Stars, telepathy is instantaneous. Sometimes telepathy is used in science fiction to break the laws of physics, isn't it? Now, this happens in Star Trek quite a lot, I've noticed, whereas sometimes the scanners on the Enterprise aren't able to detect life forms because there's some, tachyon particle interference or something like that. Whereas Deanna Troi who's just a single beta Z, is able to sense, yes, they're still there, they're still alive. It's like, how does that work then? You're sort of thinking, okay. Or she can sort of sense, the scanners can't detect any life for up to 3 light years in any direction. So, and she's able to go, they're still alive on that planet over there, but that planet's 5 light years away. How are you doing that? So telepathy does, in science fiction, really quite often break the laws of physics. It seems to operate beyond light speed in some sort of strange thing. My mind to my mind, your wallet to my wallet, yeah. And I think, being able to overhear somebody's thoughts, or at least being able to receive them, even if they're not consciously transmitting them, that would give you some, very, very interesting insights into people. There's that funny old film from a few years ago, What Women Want. Who's seen that one? Is that Mel Gibson? I think it's Mel Gibson, and he's basically, I think he drops a hairdryer or something into the bath and gets electrocuted, and when he wakes up he can hear what women are thinking, and basically the movie is based on that premise. And the idea being in that that people are kind of broadcasting their thoughts, and if you're sort of tuned into it, you can pick them up and hear them, which would be probably quite alarming. At least when my missus says, "What are you thinking?" and I say nothing, she can verify that I'm literally not thinking about anything. So that's quite good. What Women Want, that's right. Well done, guys. That's quite a funny film. Chidi, the corollary to that one is, I think it's very strange when my wife says, "Are you listening to me?" It's because I find it a particularly strange way to start a conversation. I tried to tell that joke to my wife, and she just gave me one of those married looks. You are on very, very dodgy ground. Run away, quick. And Lucky Luigi, yes, quite. I was going to get onto Douglas Adams because he says it's a curse because I think I'm right. So I can't remember the name of the alien species, but there's an alien species in Douglas Adams' books where basically they're perfect. They never argue. They look after everything's lovely and absolutely wonderful, and the rest of the galaxy absolutely hates them because they're basically perfect. And so the Galactic Council, or whatever that is, it decides that basically they can't be left to be perfect. They have to be punished for this, and so they inflict telepathy on them as a punishment. So now, in order to stop listening to each other's thoughts, they have to talk at an incessantly loud volume all the time to drown out the thoughts of each other's minds. So Douglas Adams had a little bit of a take on that. That was quite fun. And Chris Viking's here. Hey, good. Too many people be on transmit and only a few on receive. Yeah, I suppose that's. Now I wonder. In the olden days, long before there was social media and internets and things like that, when we naively thought, what this planet needs. What it needs is a way for us to all communicate in near real time with being able to type our thoughts into some vast interconnected network of computers. Then, when we're able to do that. Great understanding will happen between people, and we'll be able to exchange our views in real time. We'll all go, wow, this is awesome when we're able to communicate, and peace and tranquility will reign. Right? It didn't work out like that, did it? And I think Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of these things are almost the curse of telepathy upon us, is because who hasn't had somebody on their friends list who's basically said something slightly off colour, and you're going, okay, that's new. Didn't know you felt that way about that particular topic. I'm a little bit surprised and a little bit dismayed at what I've just discovered about somebody I thought I knew. And I think some of the things, I don't know about you guys, but I don't always articulate my thoughts even inside my own head. But if somebody cuts me up, when I'm driving or something, or does something stupid in front of me and I have to slam on the brakes. Sometimes there may even be swear words, right? But usually in my head, I'm usually running through a list of things that I would, given godlike powers, I would like to do to said person. Whether it's machine guns on the front of my car or an oil slick that takes them off the road and their car crashes in a great big spiraling doom. For the great crime of cutting me up on my way home. I'm pretty sure if we were all broadcasting our thoughts or our emotions or the instant things happened, it would be really quite an uncomfortable place to be. You thought social media is destroying culture. Wait till we can do it. So if you exposed to the world my unfiltered, instantaneous reaction to things that were going on about me, I think you'd be quite shocked. And I'm sure the rest of you are probably thinking, no, I don't want my thoughts broadcast, thanks. That would be very, very bad. They used to think that now we have telegraphy, we'll be able to communicate much quicker with each other and be able to resolve things, and thus war will be obstacle. I think, they invented telegraphy just before the First World War, didn't they? That went well. They didn't bank on the ability to insult each other straight away. So maybe that's what we do with technology. It's just faster ways to argue with each other. Twitter is a curse. The Twitter witch is making everybody's thoughts split out into... So people will just... and there's a certain level of safety, isn't there, behind a keyboard. You guys, you sort of know me, don't you? You in some ways have got the advantage. You get to see me, you know what I look like, and you kind of get a feel for where I am because you see me and you can see the way my expressions work and stuff. Whereas you guys are just, you're just bots as far as I'm concerned on the internet somewhere. You may not even be real. How do I know? You're just text on the screen, scrolling up on the right hand side. That's all I've got. And the rest of the internet is like that, isn't it? It's just text on the page that somebody somewhere has written, and there's an icon. The icon next to your avatar is, in my case, it's me, with my hat, looking. I think I'm that way around actually. I'm looking sagely off into the distance in a wistful sort of way. That's kind of an honest avatar, whereas other people have whatever takes their fancy. Okay, so I've got no idea what you're like based on your avatar. The only thing I could judge you on is by what you say in text, and not a very good way to judge people. Low Earth orbit. Join my stream sometime. Make sure I'm real. Well, there you go. Okay, we've got to try that. I'm going to visit somebody else's. Chatbot, so my secret identity is revealed. No, I've rumbled you all. He's on to us. So to Twitter and Facebook, I think I've moved us almost into that sort of where telepathy would be if it was a real thing that we can actually just transmit with our brain, and I'm not sure it's necessarily a very healthy thing to be able to see. Never change your avatar. No, I kind of settled on it. I was never very good at coming up with avatars that meant anything, nor usernames actually. Nim Duskgreen, mine is a CME leaving the sun. Well, see, what does your avatar say about you? I don't know. But we do. I like. Putting this into a writing context. Observing what people do on social media and in real life and on Twitter and all the other places where you can observe people is endlessly fascinating, because some people will get very riled up about things. Very, very upset, at least it seems so. I think telepathy would maybe have the same sort of problem. I commissioned an avatar from an artist. Excellent. Talk Noble sort of put an octopus in the chat. That's very clever. Is that your avatar? So that's one aspect. I think we used to think that giving humanity access to great knowledge and communication abilities would solve a lot of problems, and maybe it has. But it's certainly introduced a lot more. And then there's the sort of the wider things about telepathy, because in science fiction, like I said already, it's quite often used at distance. It's usually like an emergency transmitter thing, i.e., the spaceship's not working, the radio's broken down, the engines are off, but we've still got the one person in the ship who's got telepathy, so we can get them to send a message to help us get out of trouble. That's a very common thing in science fiction, and it seems to imply that telepathy doesn't use radio waves. It uses something else. No, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I mean, somebody tell me. I don't think there's any scientific basis for telepathy actually working, unless somebody tells me otherwise. But it's kind of it's more sort of space magic, isn't it? I mean, but it's a very common thing. I mean, Star Trek has the Vulcans and it has the Beta Zeds and various other. Telepathy seems to be a relatively common thing in the Star Trek universe. A lot of great things end up being a double-edged sword. Exactly, you're quite right, Montauk. I mean, that's the thing with any technology, though, isn't it? I mean, you can use it to do good stuff, or you can use it to do bad stuff. The technology itself is kind of indifferent. It's what we use it for, and unfortunately, we use it a lot for things that are not really appropriate. And sci-fi telepathy has often nothing to do with radio. Yeah, you're quite right, Alan. It seems to use something else. It seems to use some other means of transmitting things. And like I said, earlier on the stream, it seems to bypass the laws of physics sometimes, because it seems to sometimes operate beyond the speed of light. And even and Star Wars, let's take Star Wars for a minute. Star Wars is a slightly different case because there's the Force, which allows you to communicate to people to a degree, but the Force allows you to do other things as well. So, and we'll get on to telekinesis and stuff like that in a bit. But it shows up in science fiction a lot, and I think, and Alan's read my mind, oddly enough, because he's good at this. Sci-fi telepathy is often nothing to do with radio, and Crumb's come up with it there. It's really a storytelling shortcut. It kind of is a lot of the time. So we need a way to get the information through the scene, and the radio's busted. We'll use the telepathic crew member who kind of do that sort of stuff. So sometimes it is a storytelling thing. Sometimes it's a way to give a character a bit more mystique. They're the telepathic one. But it comes. I mean, it was in Blake 7. There was Callie in Blake 7. She was telepathic as well. And I think even in things like Space 1999 in the second season, there was a telepathic alien. So it's a way of making your character a little bit more kind of, they've got special powers. Ancilius seems a bit topic breaking, but writing questions allowed. Writing questions are always allowed on this Monday stream. So yeah, fire away with any writing questions. That's kind of what we're here. So how about when you say something just before someone else does it? Is that picking up people's thought waves? Well, that's I'd like to know. I don't know if any actual serious research has been done into telepathy. Marco Sparks says could be related to quantum effects like the instantaneous action at a distance of split photons. The whole quantum entanglement thing. Maybe there's something in that. But as I understand it, and I think we went through this when we were talking about faster than light comms, a few months ago, is that even with things like quantum entanglement, I don't think there's a way to transmit information faster than the speed of light. So not that we know of, but whether telepathy, if it exists, which it probably doesn't, does it use something else? Could it use something else? In Time for the Stars, telepathy is one of the main points of the story. So it's a very common thing, and I've used it. I used it in Shadewood. Some of the characters are able to talk to each other at range, and it is, I will admit, it is a bit of a storytelling shortcut, because otherwise your characters have to go back to base, don't they, to get the next set of instructions and then return to wherever they were, or they have to send a carrier pigeon or a dragon or flying something, whatever it is. So telepathy is a really handy way in a story to say, right, your next, so how's it going? It's kind of like a walkie-talkie, isn't it? It's all good, over. Right, have you caught the goodies yet? No, I haven't, over. Make sure you do. Roger that. It's sort of space walkie-talkies, isn't it? And Silius,
So Mans vs. Pixel says there's been a standing $1 million prize for proof of any paranormal activity by the James Randi Formation. It's remained unclaimed since 1964, so the odds are not good. And Celia says, so I'm reading the Battletech sci-fi novels from the 80s and 90s. I noticed that they contain many abbreviations, mostly technical systems like FTL, or weapon systems like LRMs, long-range missiles, or PPCs, particle projector cannons and stuff. Would you, as a modern writer, approve the vast uses of abbreviations for those? That's an interesting question. Basically, I've always recommended that if you're writing in a particular universe, you've got to understand how the people in that universe would work. Okay, so those of who've been here a while will possibly remember the Audi TT explanation for this one, whereby we wrote a paragraph which is basically Jack got into his vehicular machine, fired up the fuel injection system, waited as the petrol coursed the fuel lines. The cylinders reciprocated their action, priming the crankshaft, which applied drive to the gearbox and then to the wheels. The clutch took up the strain as the car moved forward, and Jake went to Tesco's to buy some milk. Like, it's all accurate, but it's not how the real world works, is it? So, if you take that to your sci-fi universe, it's a case of if that's the way the people in the universe would refer to the items, it's okay. You've got to make it believable. Basically, in a sci-fi, in a genuine sci-fi universe, if you put yourself in the future, you don't explain how the gun works. You just grab the gun and fire it. You don't explain how the warp drive works. You just switch it on and hold on and hope for the best. So, if you're being too technical about the way things work and how they things and you're kind of describing it for the benefit of somebody from the 21st century who's kind of listening in through the novel, you're probably not getting the thing right. You need to, people don't explain how tech works, it just works. Most people don't know how a car works or a toaster works. Okay, it's a toaster. We all know what a toaster is. And in the future, everybody will know what an LRP is. Okay, so if that's what you'd expect the characters in the future to just take it for granted, they should take it for granted. You shouldn't have to explain it. If you've got a lot of abbreviations, it might be worth thinking about an appendix at the back of the book to basically explain what these things are. That would be sort of my suggestion. But make it authentic for the people who live in the future. Don't explain it for the benefit of the people in the past, unless you want to take it out of the story and put an appendix, which means that people can refer to it if they want to. That's what I would do. But I wouldn't take time explaining them in the story because it's simply going to slow the story down. If you've got a lot of that sort of stuff, put it somewhere as a reference for the reader outside of the story. That's what I would recommend. So anyway, so there we go. Bilbo Gavins, how big should a paragraph be? My recommendation on paragraph is to keep it short because visually a paragraph is can be quite intimidating if it's a big paragraph. I mean, if you think of an average page of a book, okay, if a paragraph is, let's say, almost half of that length of a page of a book, it's you kind of look at it going, okay. There's part, certainly for me and for many readers, there's part of my brain that goes, long paragraph coming up, got to concentrate. Whereas if the paragraph is broken up by a bit of white space every maybe 6 to 8, maybe 10 at the top lines, your brain kind of goes, okay, I can handle that. That paragraph's all right. There you go. And then, there's another paragraph. I'll keep going. So I wouldn't personally go beyond maybe kind of 8 to 10 lines tops for a paragraph. If it was getting anything above sort of 6 to 8, I'd be getting a bit nervous, thinking I really maybe should chop it up a bit. That's what I would recommend. Bigger than a sentence, says Talk there. Well, that's definitely true. And Glenn, original Star Trek pilot had the storyline of ESP being a known scientific thing, and the crewman god that goes with God. That's right. That was the one where they go beyond the energy barrier at the edge of the galaxy. That was quite good. Didn't the CIA spend ages trying to see if telepathy could spy on the Russians? Excellent. So how would you implement telepathy? Is it direct thought transmission, or does it have to be words? So that's an interesting one. So when I'm, when I'm speaking to you guys here, I'm using audio, right? I'm speaking. I'm having to formulate words to get my thoughts across. But when I'm thinking, When I'm reading a book, there's a voice in my head. The voice in my head is my narrating voice, which is reading the book. When I'm thinking about things, I'm not sure if I'm articulating actual words. So if I'm trying to imagine a scene for my things, or I'm plotting something, trying to work something out, I'm not sure if I'm going through a process of actually talking in my mind. And whatever it is that I'm actually doing that leads to an outcome, I'm not sure if you could overhear that and make sense of it. I don't know if that would make sense as a thing to listen to or transmit. The thing is, your consciousness, lucky Luigi here, the thing is your consciousness is always lagging behind reality. You're already reacting before your thought process is finished. Yeah, so that one's really weird, isn't it? Because, yeah, and you're absolutely right. I've read this before, that your thought process rationalizes what you do rather than being in front, as we would hope we were, in front of it going, right, this is how it's going to be, right, and let's take some action. The sort of action occurs and then your brain goes, yeah, and this is the explanation for what we just did there. And then it retrospectively fits it in to make you feel like you actually did it, which is, when you start working that out, you kind of feel very, very disconcerted about the entire nature of the universe. So be careful if you go down that particular rabbit hole. Wentech says, good evening, Dru-ids. Are you aware of the Lost Fleet series? The writing style there is good for laymen, written by a retired naval commander. It's a nice view of combat. Yes, I have read those ones. They are good. Yes, they are good stuff. And so yes, I would say Battletech nerd fan will know the abbreviations. But if you're just starting out, an appendix would be a good idea. Yes, I think that's quite good. Bilbo Gowans, currently I keep them between 4 and 6 lines, no more than 6. I would say that's good. Bilbo Gowans, yes. Where no man has gone before, that's quite right then, so well done. I'm trying to catch up with the chat now, I'm a bit behind. Using your visuals as well, that's right, I communicate. I'm fairly animated when I'm talking. Animals, babies can think about things without having to. Yeah, so that's a very good point, actually, Alan. That's gone down to the sort of nub of it, hasn't it? Is that if you haven't got a vocalized language, you can still think. You can still work things out. So if you were listening in via telepathy to that thought process, what would it feel like? What would you be getting? Would you be getting a sense of the problem that they were looking at? I don't know. That's quite fascinating. If you were to communicate telepathically with somebody who didn't know your language, I suppose that's similar to trying to understand a foreign language in some ways, isn't it? You know you're able to think, but you can't understand what the person's saying. So you have to find some kind of common elements in common. That's interesting. And so it's my favourite form of telepathy, especially long-range telepathy, is that you just know what the other party wants to do. Yeah, so I played around with this in Shapewood a little bit. I sort of I added into the text, if you like, that was sent between people, that they could sense the emotive state of the person at the other end, and they could also tell if they were lying or not. And basically it was a plot device that I used, that you can't lie through a telepathic link. It's almost like the message that you send has a texture and a colour depending on how truthful or not it is, and so it's very easy for them to tell whether or not someone's trying to be deceptive. You can't do it through the telepathy link. So that was something I added in as a flavour. Bilbo Gammon says, I don't need to write about my stories. Excellent. Nimjosk, I'm dyslexic. Wonder if that would cause problems in telepathy. I don't know. I mean, dyslexia is. I mean, my eldest son's dyslexic, and that's more a words thing, isn't it? So, at least certainly that's how my son interprets it. But if you give him a diagram of something, he can work his way through that like a dose of salts. He's very mechanically, diagrammatically organised, but he doesn't get on with words very well. And words are an arbitrary mechanism to communicate information, aren't they? So if you're a visual person, i.e. you could communicate in shapes or orientations or viewpoints or something. I don't know. There's all sorts of ways telepathy could potentially work. And Wentex is also dyslexic. When I write far behind what I'm thinking, and then I end up missing things and sentences after too long. And when I read it back, it can be not making much sense. Proofreading helps, I guess. So yeah, I've had the experience of not being able to get the thing out as fast as my brain is sort of trying to process it, which is quite weird. And I think I'm very mildly dyslexic. Obviously a little bit more at the moment. Dyslexic. I'm very dyslexic. That's what I am. Because you know that some dyslexics will know this, is that you get the when you have particularly heavy black text on a white background, you sometimes your brain focuses on the gap between the text rather than the actual text itself, and you sort of get this weird glow around the actual real words, and all you can see is the rivers of white space between the words, and it's a very peculiar effect. I definitely get that, particularly when I'm tired. So yeah, there are some very strange things, but I don't think so, because I think it's, depending on how dyslexia gets you, it's sort of it tends to be focused on the words rather than the meaning and the explanation and the actual intelligence behind it all. And there you go. Glenn's another one. What would it be like to hear the thoughts of an animal? I know people think they in their native language. Or my dad does maths in his head in German, not English, though he speaks English. So yeah, an animal. What would that be? I mean, I don't know what it would be for my Labrador. It would be, is there any biscuits? Is there any biscuits? There were biscuits earlier on. There could be biscuits again. It's been a long time since I've had a biscuit. Have you got any biscuits? Have they got any biscuits? Has the guy at the door who I've just barked at, have they got any biscuits? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what my Labrador's thinking. But some animals might be slightly more intelligent. I don't know. Marco Sparks, bi or trilingual people I know have stated that they actually think about problems differently if they're working in different languages. That's fascinating, isn't it? So perhaps language does help structure the thinking process, or at least the justification. Wow. I'm not multilingual, so I'd love to know. In fact, to be honest, to me, I can clearly see there are multilingual people. In fact, one of my friends is multilingual. He actually works as a translator. But to me, that's almost magical. The fact that you can communicate in more than one language at will. That to me feels like quite a magic power. And he says he has the same impression of me when I basically can hear a piece of music and then go, oh, I know how that works, and I can play it on the piano. And he says to me, I think when we have discussions about this sort of down the pub and have a beer and stuff, he says, the fact that you find my ability to do things in multiple languages bizarre, he says, I find that perfectly natural and not very ordinary at all. And when I look at you being able to just hear a piece of music and then immediately play it on the piano, he says, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's witchcraft to you. And I'm saying, like, it doesn't feel that special to me, it's just something I can do. And maybe we are clever, wonderful people, just in general, all of us. And some of the skills that we have are remarkable to each other but feel quite ordinary to us. And so this, Drew, another question. I just got the Shayward Saga on Audible. Thank you very much. Because I saw that you read them, so why should I do it then? Is there an ED reclamation version done by you as well? No, there isn't. No, the only reclamation version is the one that was done by Toby Longworth. That was the fully kind of acted version, so that's the only version that exists at the moment. I suppose I could do one, but it takes an awfully long time to produce an audiobook. Really, really hard work. Almost, to be honest, almost as much time to create an audiobook as actually writing the damn book in the first place. So it's a lot of work to make an audiobook. How do I get on with the ink stain picture test? Never tried it. I'll have to try that one day. Context helps understanding, so perhaps sharing common frame of reference. That makes sense. Or Glenn says you just have an impression of a doggy biscuit. Just dog biscuits everywhere. That's what my Labrador's thinking. Or sleep. Can I go to bed now? You're coming to visit me again? No, okay. I'm going to wag my tail, but that's it. Can you leave me alone to sleep? So many mastered skills seems magical to the uninitiated. I think that's true. I mean, it literally is an acquired behaviour, isn't it, through lots and lots of practice. So, Lucky Luigi says, language shapes reasoning. I do think differently in different languages. So that is fascinating. So that implies then that different languages are possibly better at solving different types of problems, maybe, and that if we could refine language to the best language, maybe we could improve our powers of reasoning. Glenn, true, I have a head for maps and internal direction keeping, but others don't, and others find it weird. I can have maps in my head, but I find it weird. Yeah, so actually the maps thing is, I think some of us are sensitive. Now this might be a slightly wacky theory, but I feel it's got some legs, and I don't know whether this is a sensitivity to the natural world or whether it's something that you learn through simply because you do it a lot. Whereas I feel that I've got a certain sensitivity, and this could be complete nonsense, but I feel like I've got a certain sensitivity to magnetic fields. I can, if I'm outside, with lack of other reference points, I can usually, with a pretty high degree of accuracy, figure out which way is north, and I can orientate myself without other reference points. And I went to, and I've been there a couple of times, but I went to Australia to visit. Well, my sister's emigrated out there. Went to visit her, and I found the experience of the sun being in the northern hemisphere of the sky incredibly disconcerting. Almost nausea-inducing for a few days until I kind of got my head around it. The fact that the sun was in the wrong part of the sky by my internal sort of compass really screwed me up for a bit. It was, and everyone was like, "What are you complaining about?" I don't. Everyone was giving me weird looks, but I found it very odd. Just, and I felt like I was in the wrong place, and I felt very on edge, I think is the right word, because the sun was in the wrong place. It was in the north. It's not supposed to be in the north. That's not where it's supposed to be. And I couldn't get the hang of it. It took me a long time to feel comfortable with it, and I don't know. So I don't know. Whether it's just because I'm so used to navigating, and I like my astronomy, and I'm used to the sun going up at the east, south, west rather than east, northwest. I don't know, or whether it's a sensitive that I know my way around, and then I was plonked into a different continent after getting off the airplane and not being familiar with it. I don't know, but it was really disconcerting. It's learned behaviour, so it quite likely is. That comes from knowing which direction the sun rises. It's to do with how much iron is in your blood. That's right. Do you know where the northern hemisphere is without using a compass? Yes, I can do it without a compass. I definitely can do it without a compass. So I don't know. It's odd. Not sure if different languages have better processes to work out different problems, but I think it might be easy to do some things in whatever is your first language. Talk Noble thinks in English in England and thinks in Germany and German in Austria. So that's interesting that you adapt for where you are as well. Bird brains are attuned to magnetic fields and their sense works using quantum entanglement. Truly strange. So there are creatures that definitely have sensitivity to magnetic fields and those kind of things. Whether we do, I don't know, but I just certainly felt like I did. So that's kind of weird. I suppose also the other thing going out at night in Australia is that the stars were wrong. The ones I could see that I did recognise were completely the wrong place. What's going on here? Very disorientating as an astronomer, because I'm just not used to it. I'm so used to being able to navigate at night looking at the stars and knowing what season it is by looking at the stars. I just felt like it was an alien planet because nothing was working the way it was supposed to work. So that's so I don't know. So there's that thing about how we process whether telepathy would be a good thing, and then there's the ability. Then there's the slightly more sinister aspects of telepathy. Now there's that business about being able to read people's thoughts if they're transmitting, but there's also that ability to pull thoughts out of people's heads with telepathy, i.e., read things in their mind when they're not transmitting. So effectively read the contents of their mind, not necessarily just conscious thought, but also memories as well. So if I'm a hostile telepath, then in science fiction or fantasy, I can get into your brain and I can rifle through your memories or your thoughts and extract information and then obviously use it for nefarious ends. So true way you're going to be in trouble when our magnetic poles flip. Yeah, that'll be it. Drew will be going. So there's that aspect where you have the idea that telepathy can be used as a violently, I suppose. Now and I don't know. I was very worried about this. So in Shadewood, and nobody seems to have. I've never had anybody comment to me that they kind of thought it was inappropriate. But there's two things in Shadewood. One, there is the in Shadewood. Again, very minor spoilers, but Shadewood's been out for a while now, so you should have read it by now. What have you been doing? There's this concept that the women in Shadewood who have this mental power, this sort of telepathy, although it isn't telepathy, but anyway, other spoilers, are able to use their telepathy to arrest the thoughts of others and to inflict pain, kind of like a sort of remote control headache almost. And extract memories and force people to think about things so that they can see the memory. And there's this sort of sense of violation is probably the kind of the right word that they can do when they're when they feel there's a need to do so, and they do it at will. So there's not really a sort of code of conduct as to how you are. They consider themselves the superior race and they're in charge. So anybody's fair game. If they need to know something, they will break into your mind and steal that information should they feel so inclined. And I think there's that violence part of telepathy which I tried to explore there. I haven't given you permission to read my mind. Well, I'm going to do it anyway. With the power of my brain. So that's Commander O'Connor says, good luck reading my mind, I can't make sense of it myself. Super Drew's only weakness, the magneto ray. No, see, that's why I've got a hat. That's why I always wear a hat. This isn't just a hat, this is a space hat, okay? So it protects me against stuff. Exactly, so it's space magic. So that's the thing. Aeon AGV says, hey Drew, since you're one of the writers for the Eliteverse, I want to know, would the 34th century ship's computer get bricked or have errors if one were to find itself thrown back in time? I don't know, that's a good question. I don't think time travel, it's been referenced once in the lore for Elite Dangerous, but it's never been done properly. I don't think that problem has ever really been considered in the Elite universe, as whether time travel would damage things. I don't think it would, because if an elite spaceship did somehow manage to end up back in time, it would just be an elite spaceship. So I think that would be that. Speaking of which, what is that hat pin? My hat pin tonight is a sort of Celtic kind of thing, whose meaning I can't remember at the moment. I'm going to have to go and look it up. So the inside of my hat is of course lined with telepathic shielding material of very sophisticated design. So you're assuming the individual with the telepathy option of whether they want to hear your thoughts or not. So there's that with Shadewood, it was a tool that you could use, and if somebody wasn't complying with your ability to interrogate them with physical torture, then you could just sort of use some mental torture on them and extract the information you want in that way. So I kind of played around with that. Is that my flag? No, it's just. I quite like Celtic mythology and stuff like that. I just find that sort of fascinating. So I think I've got a Celtic thing just because it's kind of cool. Sounds a little like the Assembly of Magicians from the Empire trilogy by Raymond E. Feist and Jenny Wirtz. They're not telepathic, though they can check your mind with magic, and they are positioned above the law. So it's that sort of thing. Those are things that you can use as for writing. And it's quite a powerful thing that you can either steal information or steal memories or force people to think in a certain way by using telepathy in a sort of violent way, or as I did in Shadewood, and as you see in Star Trek sometimes, using telepathy to inflict pain. That I've thought was quite an interesting mechanism, and I've used that in my stories in the sense that I can concentrate hard on you, and without any physical connection to you, I can inflict pain on you in the form of a headache or something like that. In Shapewood, I came up with the idea of being able to pinch each other's telepathic ability, and so you had this almost like a pyramid scheme, really, of levels of telepathic capability, in the sense that if you stole power from an individual who is less powerful than you effectively got their abilities on top of what you already had, so you could become more potent, and then there was sort of this pecking order of potency that you could play around with. So that sort of stuff, that makes for an interesting extra power structure, I suppose, for you to play around with in your novel. So you can have technological superiority, but you can also have mental superiority, and those things can vie against each other. And in Shadewood, basically, I effectively face technology off against this mental power, which makes for fun stories. Do I like Cornish, Welsh, or Manx? I'm kind of interested in all of them. I suppose I've studied the Welsh one most. I like that stuff the most. Bilbo Gavins is writing ED fan fiction too. How far along? So fan fiction, great place to get started. So definitely worth doing that. I'm quite a big fan of fan fiction. Is that right? Fan of fan fiction, because that's how I got started. So yeah, nothing wrong with it at all. Telepathic pyramid scheme. Yes. Random stupid thoughts, says Chris. Fucking plastic foil is made of plastic. Aluminium foil is made of aluminium. Why is hydrofoil not made out of water? Very good. Do you construct these telepathic abilities before you start writing, or do they develop as a narrative? Well, oddly enough, in Shadewood, that was a central part of the plot really, really early on. One of the things that the way I write is I quite often write a scene for something and just sort of see if I enjoy the scene and whether I think it's interesting to see where it goes. And I had a scene where one of the first scenes for Shadewood is basically a sort of telepathy war, I suppose, that I played around with for a little while, thinking, okay, well, this is quite cool, actually. I quite like the idea of people having a sort of telepathic war with each other, telepathic conflict, like a fight, but only with mental powers. And I thought, okay, well, hang on a minute. I also want this novel to be scientifically accurate. I don't want to have magic in it. So how am I going to have telepathy in a magic-free universe? And I was scratching my head, and I came up with a solution to it, which actually then became the core of Shadewood in terms of what had happened and the technology and all that sort of stuff. So those sort of things came up, and I basically worked through it, and then I wanted to have something. Originally, I wanted something more akin to the Star Wars Force, but when I looked into it, and read up on the physics and stuff, I basically realised the Force in Star Wars can't exist in a real universe, because there's no way to apply a force to an object in the way that you can in Star Wars. So I had to limit what my telepathic people could do with their abilities to what's actually permissible within the laws of physics, and so I did that. So they don't have telekinesis, because telekinesis is, as far as we're concerned, is impossible, and telepathy probably is impossible, but the stuff that happens in Shadewood is explained once you get to the end of the series. So if you haven't read it, then spoilers, but there is a real science explanation for how it all works at the end. So that sort of stuff is interesting. People are going through, Chris Viking, you've started the thing, stop it. That sort of stuff. And I think it depends again what you're trying to write, because if you're in the fantasy world, telepathy might just be a given. People who could read minds, but it's quite a common thing in science fiction for aliens to be able to do it, for you to use it as a shortcut to get things to happen. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as I think you use it consistently. I think that's the important part. But it's quite a powerful mechanism to use. What would you say? Is it more complicated to have a technology accurate sci-fi universe or is it more complicated to maintain consistency in a fantasy world with magic? I think they're both hard. I think they're both hard because it's very easy to go. "Ah, I'm just gonna hand wave this. The readers can figure it out," and that happens so often in any franchise you can mention, whether it's hard sci-fi or soft sci-fi or fantasy or space opera or computer games, all of these sort of things. It's very, very easy to go, you know what, I can't be bothered to work within these strictures anymore. I'm going to just hand wavium them away or unobtainium them away. And I think it takes a real rigour on and a dedication to the craft to actually keep yourself honest and say, no, I'm going to stick with the rules that I've set up. Now, even if those rules are fantastical, i.e. they're magic and they're set in a magical universe, operating within the rules of the universe you've designed, or operating within real physical limitations that you've set it in the real world, I personally have great respect for that, and I think readers appreciate it too. I think if they can sense that the author, the writer, has worked hard to accommodate a consistent world, I think that's worthy of quite a lot of respect, and I have a lot of respect for authors who do that, that don't basically go, oh yeah, there's this new magic thing that they didn't have last week that now they do, and that solves that particular problem. But if they had that all along, why didn't they use it last week when they were fighting the thing? That sort of internal consistency to me is hugely valuable and hugely respectful, and alas, hugely missing a lot of the time nowadays. And I lament its passing greatly. If telepathy could be used violently, then there would be defences against it too. Well, you see, that's it. Yeah, so in Shadewood, I do have a defensibility. Now, most people can't defend against it because it's a gift that some people have. But when combatants are facing off against each other, yes, they are able to counter each other's mental, volleys. So you have that idea of sparring mentally, which again is quite an interesting image. Commentator from McGlenn says, have you ever been stuck and wanted to hand wavium and then realised your new idea could work within the internal consistency of the world? Well, that's again sort of in the Shadewood thing, is I wanted to have telepathy, and I thought, well, I can't have telepathy because telepathy is not real. But I thought, I really do want that kind of whole pointing your hand at somebody and trying to mentally do something to them. I wanted that in the story, and I thought, well, how can I have that? And I wrestled with what it could and couldn't do, and then I came up with a way of it working with some technology, but it was limited into its scope and application. But I wrestled with it back and forth until I thought, actually, no, that's good enough to do what I want to do storytelling wise, but it's still actually possible according to the laws of the world that I'm working on. So I definitely wrestled with it, but I will always find a way to go, no, it's got to be real. At least in the universe that I was working on at that particular point. Now, if I'm working in a different universe, that's fine. But internal consistency, I will always strive really hard to make it work with consistency. I hate it when suddenly there's the magic talisman that breaks all the laws that came before, or suddenly, actually, yeah, we do have FTL comms after all. Isn't that great? It's like, we didn't have that last week. It's like, that's no good to me at all. Mental sparring is brilliant in concept, but would be terrible to adapt to a visual medium. So that's an interesting one, actually, Low Author, but that's a very, very good point. So in a book, you can do things. You can write that scene from the perspective of one of the combatants, or you can do it from the narrator's kind of omniscient viewpoint. And if you're in the viewpoint of one of the combatants, you can sense the strength, you can sense the headache building in your head, you can sense the pressure, you can sense the energy, you can sense that. And one of the things I did in Shadewood to kind of tell you, the reader, that some mental stuff sounds wrong, but some mental stuff was coming, was to make the characters sense a sort of strange smell when it occurred. There was just like, so if you imagine the smell of a soldering iron, okay. I don't know why I chose this sort of strange hot metal smell, but it's quite distinctive, and I use it. When the combatants are using their mental powers a lot, they get this sense that there's this smell of hot metal around them, and it's a sort of cue for you, the readers, that something mental is occurring, and I use that to kind of make it. But if you were filming it, it would be really hard, because all you'd actually really have is people kind of with outstretched hands, kind of straining like that, and there's no visual anything, is there? Or if you're really just concentrating, all you have is somebody sort of sitting on their knees, eyes closed, concentrating hard. And I suppose you'd have to maybe do the telepathic voice in a sort of reverby sort of way, with that kind of off-screen camera kind of stuff. That's the way it would probably be done. But there's no visual artifacts at all. There's no sort of lightning or magic happening between the combatants. There's nothing there. The only other way I suppose you could do it is to do it in the sort of Gandalf versus Saruman way, when they sort of whack at each other physically, but they don't actually hit each other, but the blow somehow still falls. I don't know whether that would work or not. Those sort of things. So that's quite good. I think Scanners did it okay, but it's still two men sitting in the scare scowl. So when you're concentrating, fighting somebody, you're kind of like, aren't you? So I don't know if that works. If it can be thought, it can be filmed. Stanley Kubrick. There we go. So maybe there's a way of doing it. Depends on how good the actors were and what they're trying to do. As far as I remember, Babylon 5, it was a bit uncreative with the headache thing. So the headache thing is quite common. And I don't know what else. I mean, because basically in Shadewood, what you were able to do is you were able to effectively, once you were practiced, you were able to influence other people's nervous system. So you could impact their, you could clench and unclench their hands, or you could make their muscles twitch or things like that. So you had the ability to physically affect them at distance by effectively jamming their nervous system a bit. So that might make for a combat scene that would work. So all those sort of things. It's interesting to know how you film a telepathic fight. Yeah, that would be quite good fun. What about if you're doing telepathic things and feel like you were in space and your signs just clog up? Oh dear. So clever using the mental taste so there was that sense of burningness and smell that would gather in your nostrils when the mental thing was happening, which gave you a clue as to the amount of power that was being pushed out. See, Skimmer says, been fun, people, enjoy your night. It's got to go. See you, have a good one. They did okay in Harry Potter books, Snape trying to teach Harry to... Yeah, so that whole thing with the... what was that bit with Harry Potter and Snape? It was the occlusion or something. I can't remember what they were doing, but that was quite good. And they had that sort of really abrupt zoom, didn't they? And then you were in the memory of a place that had been before, and then you kind of unzoomed out. That was quite good. And so yes, in movies I like it most when the display of a thought communication is done by the actor, like a close-up that shows some kind of enlightenment or other fitting reaction to the thought the character just received. So yeah, so if the actor's good, they can kind of, do that kind of, react to the thing, and you're going, they've just figured out, or they've just received some information, or they've just kind of got that crashing expression on the face where they go, oh no, kind of that thing. So that sort of thing is quite interesting. So I don't know. It's a very common thing, and I would definitely encourage you to consider its use in novels, because I think it's a very powerful way of keeping the pace up of the things that are happening. So it has that massive advantage that we'll just use telepathy to get the story moving again. So that's quite a useful thing. If I'd had to bring all of my Shadewood characters back to base to get this next set of instructions to carry on with the missions that they were on, that would be very, very tedious to write, because it's just a pain. Or you basically have to give the characters a level of autonomy in the story that doesn't quite gel with some of the centralised structures that I wanted to kind of impress upon the reader. So there's all those sort of tensions. So that's quite good. Eamon Lotus, as a writer, how do you feel about Warhammer 40k? Do you see Grimdark as a whole to be in childish, or is it more like comics? A bit more direct and I think it depends. Some of it is it's like a lot of this stuff. It's like Marvel in some ways. A lot of it's quite deep and quite considered, and other parts of it just seem to be like la 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 la. It's like, really, what's going on here? So some of that stuff is it's patchy. I think is the answer. Sometimes it's very serious and quite deep and significant, and other times it just isn't. And sometimes your brain's going, am I trying to read something deep and cerebral into this, or is there nothing actually there? So I'm not really sure. So I don't know. So those are interesting things. Those are definitely interesting things. So that's sort of telepathy. I mean, there's obviously things like telekinesis, which is a bit more like Star Wars: The Force, which I don't have in my novels because I don't consider that possible within the laws of physics. You'd need magnets or anti-gravity or something wacky to do that. Being able to move things around by the power of your mind would be very interesting to be able to do, but I don't think that has any place in a hard sci-fi universe, because there should be no way it's possible to do. But unless somebody tells me otherwise, because somebody probably will, they usually do. Drew, just a small size. I don't follow you on social media. Was that who was that with you in the prior retro? That was my son. that was my number 2 son. That was Josh. So he's an avid gamer as well. So he occasionally joins me on forays into space and stuff. But I needed 2 players for that particular stream in order to play some of the games. So that's who it was. Asimov's Foundation trilogy has people with mental powers that seem supernatural. The ideas are explored further in the prequels, and there was a lot of that stuff in science fiction. It comes up a lot of the time, and so yes, Warhammer 40k is very interesting. For me, the unique thing is that everything is so totally exaggeratedly powerful, but still the universe is kind of in balance. So you have enormous powers in those universes, don't you? Both technically and otherwise. So there's some quite good stuff. But I think that whole ability to think beyond yourself and intercept other people's thoughts has quite a lot going for it. And science fiction has explored what it would be like to be a race of telepaths. Or in, for example, in Deanna Troy's case in Star Trek, she's only half Beta Z, so she can sense emotions, but she can't pick up thoughts. And sensing emotions, I mean, most of us can do that a bit anyway. I mean, we can tell when somebody's annoyed, right? And we can tell when somebody's in love because they become all obnoxious and soppy. And we can tell when someone's mildly irritated because, the way they act. So, being able to sense emotions isn't actually all that remarkable, and some of us are better at it than others. So that's quite an interesting ability. And I think if you're designing characters for a novel, sometimes it makes sense to have one with that bit more ability to sense things that are a bit beyond things, because it can come in quite useful as a storytelling thing. So that's always quite good. That's always quite good. I think being a serious empath would suck, says Osland 1973. I don't think I'd want to. Yeah, if you could actually be experienced, I think that's the difference, is you can sense somebody else's emotion. So it's fairly easy for most of us to go, actually, that person's really upset at the moment. But and we can empathise with them to a degree, but we're not actually experiencing the emotions that they're going through directly. Although some people get pretty close. Whereas if you were actually able to sort of absorb their emotional state and actually experience that for yourself, that I think would be pretty distressing. I certainly wouldn't like it. So that would be, I think, quite uncomfortable. I mean, you'd have to be, if somebody was angry and you could actually feel their anger and actually experience it, almost as if it was your own anger, that would be very odd. That would be very, very strange. a TV show, Supernatural, has some creatures that can use telepathy, but the show isn't grounded by science. There's not really an explanation for how it works. So again, those sort of things are your choice, aren't they? What's your show about? What's your book about? All those sort of things. That sort of stuff is interesting. And I think, again, like I say, in most of these streams, it comes back, what kind of story are you trying to write? And what's the game of it? And all of these things are tools you can use to make the characters a bit different, or move the story on, or make your universe a bit different to anything else that's going on. Feeling the hunger for the dog biscuits instead of just hearing the word biscuit. Yeah, so of course Labradors are perpetually hungry, so that wouldn't be good. I'd be stuffing my face with biscuits. You would be Palpatine if you could go, I can feel your anger. So that's interesting. That's a good point, actually. So Palpatine can feel the anger. I don't know if I'd want to feel somebody else's emotions. I mean, I can empathise at a level of abstraction, can't I? So if somebody's upset, and they're somebody close to me, then I'll try and comfort them. I'll give them a hug or sit down next to them and try and be with them when they're experiencing their emotions. But I'm not actually experiencing their emotions. I might get sympathetic emotions. If someone's crying their eyes out, then I'm going to be sad for them, but I'm not experiencing their pain, whatever that happens to be. Whereas if I was a true empath, I would be experiencing their pain, and that would be odd. That would be very weird. Dachshunds are constantly hungry as well. So I think we have decided that actually listening to dogs using telepathy would be a bad idea. I think we've established that would be quite a good thing. Oh dear, awesome stuff. So I think that's good. Button Pusher says, my father is a Vietnam veteran, and when he's depressed I can literally feel it from the other room. So that's fascinating. So is that a family connection, or is there something even more deep going on there? That's really interesting. And Celia says, that's the one important consideration for empathy. I can choose not to feel the emotions of others, can't I? Well, I mean, we are very emotional creatures, and I certainly find if somebody around me is down, or upset or depressed or whatever it happens to be, if that's somebody that I care about, then I find myself emotionally drained. And what do I mean by emotionally drained? I'll try and define that in a moment. But I feel it's taken some of my energy away in order to be with them. It's like I've lost some energy, and I do actually feel genuinely physically tired, and I think a lot of introverts will resonate with this, that dealing with other people's emotions requires a lot of energy, in the sense of and I don't mean energy in the technical sense, but I mean energy in the sort of amount of motivation I have to do other things, I suppose. It's very draining, and whether that's, and I can, if I'm dealing with difficult people during my day job, I will come home, or switch off the Zoom or whatever it happens to be nowadays, much more physically actually tired than I otherwise would expect to be. So I would probably find myself going to bed much earlier, and not having the energy to deal with anything else that day because of the emotional drain that I've experienced. And it's like emotions can actually cost you actual energy, and it's peculiar because, I mean, your brain is functioning, your body's doing its thing, regardless of whether you're dealing with people's emotions. And from a physical actual energy in versus energy out expenditure in technical terms, there can't be that much difference. But I feel mentally tired by those sort of things, and being an introvert at heart, I find I have to retire from those sort of people within a relatively short space of time, because I can't have my energies drained. It's like a Star Trek alien that's slurping my life force away, Labrador Wager Shayward Saga. I agree. In the real world, I can usually only empathise with people close to me, and I could not choose not to. So yeah, so I don't know. That's a bit strange. You know, would that be true for people who are not close? Well, sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. It depends on whether I feel a connection of any kind with that individual, I suppose. And that's the thing. And what do I mean by connection? These are all very nebulous things, and I think that's the problem with things like telepathy. Is when you start trying to define what a thought is or what an emotion is, it becomes very nebulous very, very quickly. You have to sort of go on instinct as they have to talk about it and write about it. Button Pusher says it's not psychic or anything. Yeah, it's just something I've picked up on over the decades. But that's impressive that you can do that. So if that's a learned skill in your case, in your dad's case, what have you actually learnt? What is the thing that you've learnt that allows you to pick up his emotional state from another room in the house? You know, there's something going on there, which is a little bit kind of, you know, you could argue needs investigation as to how does it work. So I don't know. But we have decided that reading the thoughts of Labradors is a bad idea, so I think we have achieved that. That's good. So, you know, to summarise, telepathy I think is a really powerful thing to use in your writing, because it allows you to communicate quickly with different individuals at range. That's quite useful. You could use it for conflict. You can use it for, you know, you can use it for fighting. You can use it for violence. You can use it for inflicting harm. You've got lots of things you can use it for. You can use it as a sort of get-out-of-jail-free card for emergency communications, those sort of things as well. So it's quite a powerful mechanism to use in writing for storytelling. So Button Pusher says it has mood swings, so I just anticipated. So you've got used to a pattern of behaviour, I suppose. That makes sense. Yeah. Interesting though. Interesting. So there you go. There we go. How about beings that are connected through a network and use telepathy that way? So there's another way. So you know, that's a bit like Shablin in some ways. That's kind of how I made it work. But you know, there's things like the Borg as well. You know, is that telepathy or is that technology allowing them to connect? So you know, I think the lines between technology and biology and psychology get a bit blurred when we start considering the things and what we're capable of doing now. There are people who live on the Labrador coast called Labradors. I feel we've gone full circle now. Yeah, like an implant in the brains that gives them access to the network. You see, so that's technology giving us telepathy by means of technology, isn't it? Yeah, so I don't think that's all that far away, is it really? I mean, like I said, I think at the beginning of the stream, you know, you talk about mobile phones, right? We've all got a mobile phone, most of us. And, you know, we kind of hold them to our ears and we're almost there, aren't we? It doesn't take too much of a leap of the imagination to think we could integrate some of that capability directly into our mind at some point in the future. You know, and that leads to the Borg, doesn't it? Which is a bit scary. So who knows? But there we go. So those sort of things do also intersect. So I think it's a rich vein of subject area to have a look at in your writing. So there we go. Anyway, my friends, it is that time. We have waffled on for an hour and 40 minutes, and I've had 2 late nights, so I need to get some sleep. I'm a bit knackered actually. And it's a busy week. I've got lots on this week. So Wi-Fi brain. And then of course you could jam brains, couldn't you, if you were all connected by the internet? I mean, imagine actually how bad it is nowadays when the Wi-Fi or the internet goes down. Everyone's like, you know. And just imagine if it was plugged into your brain and then the Wi-Fi went down. It's like, imagine the uproar. It'd be quite scared. How would cybersecurity work? Oh, don't even go there. That would be awesome. That would just be terrifying, wouldn't it? I'm going to hack your brain. Here's a phishing email. Don't think that. You'd have to come up with a whole new phrase, wouldn't you? I don't know. JR1988, to be honest, when I put telepathy in my novel, I didn't think about it too hard, but later on down the line I will delve further in. I think it's worth having a think about how it works consistently across your novel. So that's quite good. Marcus Marks, very interesting discussion. Thank you very much, Drew. No problem. No, it's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. I like talking about these things and chattering away. Bill Gavin says, the first stream I watched in full without a break. Really enjoyed it. No worries. Good to have you on board. Crash your brain. Dru-ids has experienced a problem and will now close. Good night. My leg got a virus. I'm just rebooting my ears. Excuse me for a moment. All that sort of stuff. Anyway, a fishing thought. Yeah, don't think this link. Think before you think. Yeah, you can just see all the spam thoughts. I mean, it's just like sounds like a disaster, doesn't it? I've had some spam thoughts today. I just put my spam filter on. No, I think we can't go there. That'd be awful. Anyway, my friends, be good. I will see you on Thursday for more space adventures in No Man's Sky. So onwards we go, and so yeah, Thursday will be fun. We're going to keep exploring the procedurally generated universe of No Man's Sky and see what we find. So see you all then. Be good. Have a fantastic week ahead. Look after yourselves. And as always, right on. Be good, and I'll see you soon.